So right along those lines, would you like to share any stories that particularly highlight what 360 stands for?
Well, that's basically all we are is stories. But one of the things that I've seen that's been great is people struggle when you're starting from scratch. If they have to come up with a way to serve or to create an opportunity, often nothing happens. It's the inertia of getting past, like getting up, where do I start, who do I contact, how do I get involved? But when something's already in motion, people are very willing to join in. A good example of this was when we were working at a house that's just across the street here, which is our intern house. We had projects going on almost every weekend. And then one of the days, we had a church partner that came and worked with us. So there was a lot of people coming and going. And people in the neighborhood just sort of walked out of their houses, saw what was happening, and said, hey, how can I help? Walk across the street, and people that we had a relationship with maybe had never worked with us in the past, but they saw that something was already happening. People were already helping and moving, and said, hey, how can I help? And so as a result, relationships were established with us as an organization, with other people who were volunteers, and now they know that we're on a regular basis doing things in the neighborhood and are looking for ways to, volunteer, and they're completely willing as long as something's already going on. So as long as we can communicate with them that, yeah, we're working today over here at this project, people love to show up and plug in. So for me, that's been big. Is it just helps people sort of get over that hurdle of not getting involved.
How do you see 360 growing in the future?
Organically, if you could say that. It's not something that we have a desire to build a massive institution or have huge staffing or programmatic type of things, but realistically, just continuing to sort of expand in the projects that we're involved in. Realistically, it's hard because I think our limitation right now is not having the resources to coordinate the volunteers that are present. That often will have more volunteers who want to get plugged in, but it requires somebody to sort of communicate with them, to arrange things, to make sure everything is in place at the right time for them to plug in. And so we often will have more volunteers present than we have the ability to coordinate for. And so other than additional volunteers / staff people to help coordinate those efforts, I don't think it's going to be a massive organization ever. I don't think it should be. If anything, I'd love to see it replicated in other neighborhoods, but it wouldn't be something we would do. It's got to be something that's part of the identity of that place that it's in. So I would see people coming alongside us and trying to figure out what it looks like in their neighborhood. It's not necessarily like, it's not like a franchise, but it's kind of like a working model to say, like, this is what it looks like for us. You got to figure out what it's going to look like for you. If anything that we do here can be beneficial, great. We'd love to help. We'd love to help you start something over there. So in that sense, maybe it's a model for other things to come in other neighborhoods, but everyone's going to have its own flavor. And I think that's great. I think it's how it should be.
What do you think is the most beautiful thing about 360?
I really like how it, by its nature, sort of becomes reciprocal. And I think it taps into sort of some of the goodness of humanity, where when somebody is helped, often they just want to help somebody else in return. And so a cycle begins where we can come alongside of somebody and say, we're going to help you with this project that's maybe more than you can handle. And they're so thankful and they're so blessed by it that on the back end, whatever skills and talents they have, they want to give back in some way. And so it kind of perpetuates itself. which I think is great. The phrase is always that asset-based community development, which is it's kind of a buzzword for it. And it's true, but that fleshed out is it really works very well. And I think often people really have a desire to give back when they've been given to. So I think that's a really beautiful thing. And it also connects people. Another thing I think that's really beautiful is it connects people who probably wouldn't ordinarily be connected. That often when we're working on projects, we will get some of the most different segments of the population working together and finding out that other person isn't as bad as they thought they were. And maybe the stereotypes they had coming in are completely wrong. And so they walk away with some semblance of a relationship. They might not be best friends, but at least their idea of who that person is has been challenged. And going forward, hopefully they think differently. I think that's pretty great.
Would you be willing to tell us about some of the struggles that have been overcome in 360?
The struggles that have been overcome and struggles that are sort of ongoing is honestly a struggle is helping people to understand what it is that we do. And the only way that we've been able to do that is really by telling stories, because it doesn't look the same twice often. It's a furnace when it needs to be a furnace for a family that doesn't have one. But then the next day or the next week, it's something completely different. So it's been a struggle to help people understand what it is that we do concisely. If they come alongside and they can see who we are and how we respond and how we act over a period of time, they begin to get it. But often it's just a quick question like, hey, what is 360? And it's a 2-minute answer doesn't usually, fit the bill. So that has been a struggle is trying to get people to understand what it is that we do. So hopefully that comes out of this.
Mm-hmm. How does faith fit into the 360 vision from your perspective?
I think it is the underlying framework that we aren't explicitly talking about faith, but we are deeply connected and committed in the relationships that we have, and we hope and we wait and we pray for the opportunities to have those genuine conversations. Everything that we do because of our faith. But we don't necessarily advertise that to the person that maybe we're coming alongside of. They may have had an experience that's totally turned them off, that if we started talking about faith, they would totally shut down. So we act out of love, and we do it in the context of relationship, and we wait for the opportunity to share more directly or to be asked about the why we do what we do, and then work on that opportunity to talk about our faith. So I think it's always present. It just might not be the first word on the page.
This question is similar to not the previous question, but the one before that. Would you be willing to tell us some of the milestones that have occurred on the way, if there are any in addition to what you've already said?
Yeah, well, milestone starting from the beginning was actually becoming an organization. That was kind of a big deal. Becoming an organization, actually getting our nonprofit status was a lot of work, when everybody's got full-time jobs, and that sort of has to happen on top of everything, all the legal work that went through that. I think establishing a budget was a big deal for an organization that, I work for a for-profit business, and so we have projected income based on the amount of service hours that we do, and it's easy to build based on that, but for us to do it based on what God provides and what donations are able to be secured, and to begin to budget and plan in advance for what we can do, what projects we can take on. That was a pretty big deal to be able to sort of have a budget to work from, to say, you know what, we're going to have money to do these things that we really have a hope to do. In every project that we've done, whether it's working for the Emerson House, which I'm sure somebody's mentioned already. Upon completion, every one of those is kind of a milestone. When we acquired what is the intern house and got it livable for interns last summer, that was a huge milestone. There's a lot of people that put in a lot of hours to make that happen, and when it came to pass, it was wonderful to see it being used for the purpose that we dreamed it would be used for. So that was a milestone. The day we were able to actually pay our executive director for all the work that he did, that was a milestone. Before that, it was just a giant volunteer position. So we have lots of milestones, and we probably don't think about those enough and aren't as grateful as we should be. But yeah, every partnership and every time that somebody else hears who we are and begins to understand what we do and begins to see the value in that, that's significant.
Have you seen a community develop and grow through this organization?
Without a doubt. Yeah, a couple of things I mentioned before is whenever a project's going on in a community and neighbors begin to rally around that project, it's amazing at what you'll find is somebody can live 2 or 3 houses away and have literally know nothing about the person that they live almost next door to, until a project is going on at their house and the person happens to wander out when they're putting out their garbage or checking their mail, wanders over. They meet that person who's been their neighbor for 5-10 years and begin to talk to them. And you see a genuine relationship, or at least understanding, coming out of that. And I think that that's huge. I mean, it's breaking down tiny little walls that shouldn't even be there. But sometimes it takes a project, or it takes something getting people out of their house to be able to see that. We put on a park party where we did a movie in the park, and we got all kinds of people out for that. Sitting together on the grass, watching a movie, laughing. We had snacks, all kinds of stuff. So we try and do as much as possible to get people who are in proximity together just to begin to engage. And sometimes that takes an event or a project or something other than everyday life to get them to do that.
Have you personally made any unexpected friends?
Yeah, I think so. Part of that's my nature, and part of that's the reason why I'm involved is I enjoy that part of it, and so I will wander down to people's houses and say hi if I see them outside. There's some guys who live across the street that I might not have a lot in common with, but I think they're hilarious guys, and I love hanging out with them. And so we've gotten them involved in some projects and worked alongside. And actually, as a result of some of those relationships, when I was painting this porch that you see around you, he wandered over and we painted until 3 a.m. And so, yeah, there's a lot of unexpected relationships that happen, and I definitely appreciate those.
How is 360 unique from other organizations, and how do you see the need for the organization and this community? How did you see these are 2 separate questions.
Okay.
I'm sorry. The first one is, how is 360 unique from other organizations?
One, I think the fact that it's relational is kind of unique. Generally, we don't work with anybody that there isn't some sort of relationship with. Usually it has to be somebody who knows somebody directly involved in 360, somebody we've worked with in the past, one of the board members, a close friend, family, whatever. That generally, if we're going to come alongside and help somebody, there has to be sort of some relationship. We're not here to just say, hey, I need X, Y, or Z, and then we never see that person again. So in some sense, I think it's a bit different because it's more ongoing. Because when we come alongside somebody or we help somebody or we engage them, it's not going to be the last time we see them. We're going to be involved with them, hopefully, for a long time to come. And part of that's that reciprocal nature where if we can come alongside of them, we really hope that whatever they can do can assist somebody else down the road. And we do that by staying in relationship with them. So I think that's one way that it's quite different.
This is the last question
Okay.
on the sheet. So, how did you see the need for the organization in this community before it existed?
Well, and that kind of goes back to the history is when we chose to move into this neighborhood, we were excited about living in this neighborhood and planting and growing deep roots in this neighborhood and hoping to, be an agent of change, whether it's here, whether it's anywhere. And what we found is there's several families, and there's been more so as time's gone on, that have a similar desire. And I think the need was sort of born out of that to say, all right, we can do some things on our own. We can all go at this by ourselves, and we'll have some impact. Would it make sense to try and create an organization to get people to rally around that maybe it would multiply our impact? And so that was part of that initial conversation to say, does this even make sense? Should we all just go at this by ourselves because this is what we value, or do we partner in this together and see what comes out of it? So I think it was born out of that desire. As we see a need, we see an area that's kind of neglected, that a lot of people like to pass through or go around. Some people are scared of it, and some people just kind of turn the other way because they think, these houses are dumpy or whatever, and they don't give people the time of day. So, we desire to see that changed, and it to, for Holland to actually engage this part of the city and see some transformation happen. So there was a definite need that we saw. There weren't a lot of opportunities here. And also, there's so many great resources in this community that people who live, within blocks of those resources don't know about. And the hardest thing is to communicate to them what's available. And I think the only way you can do that is by directly connecting with them in relationship. And sometimes it's walking with them to the place that has the resource they need and say, hey, I'll help you with this. It might be hard to get it set up the first time, but this is going to meet your need. Let's go there together. Let's get it taken care of. And then if you need assistance with it from here on out, let me know. So we saw a need and said, let's see if, coming together we can do more than we can do by ourselves.
That's all the questions that we have. Is there any last minute comments you would like to say?
Do you have any questions, camera person?
Everyone I thought of as we went was covered later, so.
Okay. Final comments. I don't know. I can't think of necessarily anything else. We're just excited to see what happens and what God does, because we really feel like there's some momentum and people are beginning to understand, and the more that we are in relationship with those people, that they get it and they see value in it and they see what we've done and they see why we do what we do, and partnerships are emerging and we're getting more students involved, which is great. And I'm excited because I think when people experience something like this early enough in their life, it can change how they choose to live their lives. That they can sometimes catch a vision for a different way of living that maybe they didn't know existed or was possible. And the hope would be that wherever they go, whether it's here, whether it's anywhere else, they remember that and they think, if they find that of value, that they try to implement it in some way, shape, or form, wherever they are, wherever they land. So I hope that happens.
I do have one more question. The name 360, can you explain where that came from and what that means to you?
It's really, we kicked around a lot of names early on. And again, as we talked about the faith thing, we didn't want to necessarily make it too strictly faith related. We wanted it to be a broader appeal. And so 360 was more representative of it being holistic, caring about the whole person, caring about more than just that one situation in the moment, but thinking about the larger picture. So 360, 360 degrees, really kind of being aware of everything around us and responding in that context. So.
Cool.